Yotp guys, and I can now open files. This is very similar to the file system I had in my last operating system, but this time I can open the file by name, not by F1, F2, or F3. I have not yet finished the function that can change the name of files, so I have to do everything manually right now, but that will be done by next video. Though I have mentioned that this is very similar to my last file system, there are some major differences, so let's look at the code. So this is the code for my file. Now, it is very similar to my last one, my last operating system, but there are a few differences. So let's just go through this chunk by chunk and figure out what's actually going on. So these first three lines are just setting up the program, and it will jump over this chunk of code. Now, this chunk of code is a function that literally just adds 1. That's all it does. And I'll explain why this is important in a bit. Now, it goes down here to this next chunk, which is actually broken up into 4 pieces. Now, what this does is it checks if the name matches. Now, the thing that's different about this operating system, one of the major things, is that I choose the files by name, not by something like their number, like F1, F2, or F3. I can give it a specific name, and then I can give it that name again, and it will open up that file. Now, why this is broken up into 4 chunks is because I need to check if each letter matches, if each individual letter matches. So it checks the first letter of my input and the first letter of the file name to see if it matches. If it does, it goes to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. Now, if those all matches, it moves on because it knows it got the right file. So that add one function is so that I can move on to the next letter. So if the first letter matches, it will add 1 to the current letter position, which will go to the next letter. And then if it's correct again, to the next letter, and then to the next letter. So if we go down here, and let's say something doesn't work, one of the letters doesn't match, well, it would go down to this chunk of code right here, and that chunk of code resets the counter and goes to the next name. Now, importantly, if it has already cycled through 4 names, so if it's going on to its 5th name, which of course there's only 4 names, it will raise an error. So it will jump to a spot in my program. Right now I just kind of have this 1536 as a placeholder, but it will jump to a spot in my program that will raise some sort of flag. Now, let's say everything does matches. It goes through all 4 letters and it says, yes, that is correct, all of them match. Well, it would go to this line, this jump line here, which just skips over this chunk and goes down here. Now that we've decided the names are equal, that we have chosen a file, it needs to actually figure out where that is in RAM. So it does a few functions to calculate where that would be in RAM, and then it preps it for being opened. This piece right here actually does most of the work. This is what displays the file. Now I have cut down the amount of lines. It is now only 6 lines of code. In my last one it was quite a few more. So this is all I need to display the file. Now, the important thing I changed is how it detects when to break out of the loop. So there are only 64 characters per file, and so when I get to that 64th iteration, I need to break out of the loop. Now, what I did last time was I simply just compared it with 64 and see if it matched. Now, that worked, but it added a few more lines. Now it would actually check every single time. So imagine those lines, even if it was 2 or 3 lines extra, imagine that times 64. So that's adding a lot more time to the program. So instead I added 192 to the counter. And so when 192 is added with 64, it actually becomes 256. Now, my computer being 8-bit can only hold 255. So this will actually reset and look like it's 0. So all I have to do is have a line, a single line, that says jump if it's equal to 0. So that may sound a little complicated, but all I'm doing is I'm exploiting the fact that my computer can only work with 8 ones and zeros at a time. Now down here, this is the typing to the screen. That's all it is. It's typing to the screen, which we have our input. So we have an input to R0, so that's going to be our character, and then we have our second input to R1, which is going to be the position on the screen. So it outputs it to the screen, and then saves that character in the correlating spot of the file. Now, importantly, if I enter the value 27, which is equal to the ASCII value for the escape key, it will jump down here, and that will reset the screen and then jump to the beginning of the program and kind of reset everything. So I have just started the operating system, and so what I'm going to do is I type in F and enter that in, and L. So FL is the command for file, for opening a file. There we go. And then we give it a space, and then we put in our name. So what I have right now is A, B, C, D, which is the only file name I have right now, because I have to input them manually, and it really sucks to manually input it. So I really want to start working on that naming function, which I should have done by the next video. So we have our file typed in, and then we just have to send it. So we have to, this takes around a minute, I've timed it out, so I'm just going to time lapse this. There we go. So the file has fully printed to the screen, and I just put that 0 in the bottom right corner just so just for a marker, so I can see when it's finally done. Sometimes I have just no idea when it's done, especially if there's a lot of blank space in the bottom. So how do I actually write to the file? So what I first do is give it the character, and then I give it the position. So I have my just keyboard, which is a really big encoder and turns my letter into an 8-bit binary number. And then I just have a direct 8-bit in case I want to give a very special character that I don't have on my keyboard, or for the special position. Let's say I want to put a 3 in that top right corner. So I would first select the number 3. So we have 3 right there, and then I press the button, and then it's loaded into the system, and then I give the position. So we see it's the first row, and then the furthest to the right. So we really just have to worry about these 6 lamps, these 6 bits. So it is row 0, and it is position 7. So if I just unlock this, and we press the button, we should see a 3 in that corner. There we go. Now I could do something else. What if I just put a blank space? How do I delete something? Well, I just have to put a space in a certain position. So let's delete that H. So I give it a space, just nothing right now, and then I give the position of that H. So we see that it's row 1, 2, 3, 4. So technically row 3 because it starts at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So row 3, and then position 0, 1. So we know we have to put in 3, and then we put in a 1. So we can unlock this, and then press the button, and that H should disappear. And so that's really it. I think it's pretty easy to use. You just need to know you put in the character first and then the position. So that's really all. How do I close out of this? So I'm done messing with my file, and now I want to close out of it. So you give it the number 27. So I don't have an escape key built into this keyboard, so I have to give it a custom entry. So it actually, 27 is really easy to remember. It looks very nice. So it is 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. So it's very symmetric. It looks good. So that is 27. I put it into the system, and then I press the enter, and we should see the screen is cleared, and we get, there we go. So that it means it has fully reset, and it is ready to take our command. As you can see, I can just start, if I close this first, I can start typing into it again, but I am just putting in random letters. So you guys can see that I can open up a file, I can write to the file pretty easily, and then I can close out of the file and save it and open up the terminal again like nothing happened. So my next project is renaming the file. So I give it a file name. It makes sure, of course, that that is a real file, that one of the names matches, and then I replace that name with a new name. So that one I'm definitely going to do next. Maybe I'll have the list function, but I'm not going to make any promises. So that was the file system for my new operating system, but that's all for now. Peace.